look?
How's my hair look?
It hasn't moved all morning. Okay. Hi, it's Jessica here from Design by Jessica and Cameron Allcott with Progressive Plants, and we're doing some fun garden tours today. This is actually one of my clients' property, and what's unique about it is we're mid-process. We've got plants in the ground.
Wait, hang on, I gotta stop you for 1 second.
Okay.
This is the house where she and I first did a consultation together.
Oh, that's right.
It was our first date.
Yeah,
plant date.
So when Cameron first recruited me to come on to help with the design because he's just so wanted, yeah, he just kind of wanted to get a feel for how I am with my clients, and I just wanted to make sure we were a good fit. So he came with me on my first appointment, and I think I knocked his socks off.
That was like 2 years ago, wasn't it? Doesn't matter. 3 years ago. But here we are now.
Here we are now. And that's actually a really good point to make, because sometimes it takes a while from concept to reality. And that's just up to the individual homeowner and what works best for them financially, time. There's so much that goes into doing a project like this. Obviously an older home, beautiful, charming older home, mature tree neighborhood. But the landscaping was very much dated to the original.
Yeah, it had been in for a really long time, and there were portions of it that were a little bit more overgrown and really kind of hard to deal with.
Well, and there wasn't a drip.
Nope, no drip.
It was just kind of your average. They threw in a couple things, and some things did okay, and some things not, because it wasn't the ideal environment for them. But here we are mid-process, and we've got some plants in, and we actually had some huge trees in the back that unfortunately had to come down because of sickness and other issues. And so I came in initially, and as we can see, there's a lot of shade. So we picked a lot of shade-tolerant plants, but there's maybe a couple things that aren't working out as well as I thought they would, because I neglected the fact that those big trees that were here when I was here doing the initial design are now gone. And when the sun comes over, because we're facing east right now, the sun comes over, and even though this is just the smallest little space, that westward afternoon hot sun is kind of giving this poor Beech a little bit of a run for his money. But he actually looks pretty good. I mean, he just got put here. And so even though he's got a little bit of scorching, it's really not bad. It's not on every leaf. I think this more has to do with transplanting. So just know that when plants go in, especially the first year, and when we get hit with temperatures like this.
Yeah, it's 100 degrees out here today, or at least dang close to it. So, but the important thing is that you are looking as long as you can get your plants through the first year, you will be okay. Plants are actually really, really resilient. Beech trees are one of the most hardy trees out there. So even if they do defoliate due to the heat or transplant shock, a lot of times they often come back. But Jessica's placement here for it, I think, is absolutely fantastic, because it will get some shade from the house, some shade from the trees. And so as this tree grows, it's not going to get the scorch that most other beech would get in full exposed locations. So its placement is absolutely ideal. We're just waiting for it to just get through that first year. And next year, it'll be absolutely stellar.
And just a disclaimer for anyone who's planting, especially right now where we've had this heat wave and everything. I mean, this is ideal. These plants are honestly doing phenomenally considering how hot it's been. But the sun exposure here is a big contributor to that. But this guy, who in my mind would be shaded by the beech, this is a beautiful summon substance Hosta, is really struggling because, again, I neglected that lack of shade that used to come from the back, and the beech is not going to be tall enough to protect him right now.
Well, and the other thing to think about too is that sometimes when we're doing the consultations, where the sun is in the sky over the course of the season, that a lot of times is really hard to predict, because as we get into the summer solstice, that sun is coming directly overhead, and if we do a consultation in the spring, we may not necessarily know how far that sun's going to come and hit.
It does shift a little bit, doesn't it?
So it shifts quite a bit as it tries to come through this in between this little alleyway, like the two houses that are right here, and just comes blaring right here. It's really hard to predict that type of exposure and just the movement of the sun in the sky.
Exactly. So what do we learn from this? Well, we learned that having a great relationship with the homeowner is number one, because I can come and I can say, okay, maybe I miscalculated that a little bit. Let's see. Move it to an alternate location and find something of similar color and characteristic that will handle this location better.
You know, Jess, some of the things too is that one of the challenges that we run into as designers as well is when we're doing like early season or late season consultations, when all of these trees don't have any leaves on them, and we have a whole bunch of sun, and then we have a really hard time predicting exactly how much sun that it's going to get or how much shade is in the area as well.
And so we're not necessarily getting as much shade out this way as I thought maybe we would have. But in general, that's okay. We adapt and we just make sure we get a result that's going to make the homeowners extremely happy.
See, now what I like that you've actually done here is I feel like you've actually compensated for this kind of like a muddled situation of sun and shade by using plants in here that will typically survive in partial sun and partial shade situations, like the Arborvitae that's right here.
This is Franky Boy, and he, my word, whimsy. He's so whimsical. He's just got the funnest texture. Throwing little pops of interesting plants like this that make a design more unique and individual. That's where it's at.
Yep, and then you've got like a little hydrangea on the end. It should get some afternoon sun.
Yep.
Yep, and that'll work out really well. And even the Japanese maples and the red-leafed coral bells in here, they'll actually tolerate like the heat and the sun very well as well.
They'll take more sun, they will, which is really nice. And we have some plants like the Johnson blue geraniums in the back that initially are going to provide a lot of foliage because they're really fast growing as we're waiting for these hostas and things to kind of catch up. But then as the garden transitions and the hostas become more center, they'll still be fine in the back, providing a little color background. So it's nice the way the seasons and the growth and the maturity will change and fluctuate in the garden, only for the better year after year.
Yeah.
And this, by the way, is a dwarf because we have to take that into account.
I was going to ask you which hydrangea you ended up putting there.
Little quickfire.
Little quickfire? Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
So won't get too big for the space because some hydrangeas get
really big.
Really big. So part of making it not too high maintenance for the homeowner is to be sure to put things in that aren't going to get too huge and they're cutting back and cutting back and cutting back. The Franky Boy is only going to get about 4 foot. So that's really nice. And the beech, you know, we know that beeches can get quite large, but they're really fun to use in an ornamental way because they grow so slow that it's not going to be anybody's problem.
Well, neither one of us are going to like either remember this because we're going to have like dementia or something by that time. So we're not going to know who planted what and where.
Not me. No, you can have the dementia. I'm not doing that. And then, you know, this is something else fun to add. Kind of goes along with the local scapes kind of idea. We did some lawn from this space, added an extra planting bed, and the homeowners really needed a nice path to go to the backyard. And I always, when I come to a property, I like to find a way to welcome guests to the backyard without having to have them come through the house. Like, I think as a homeowner, it's nice, especially if you're hosting a larger party, to just be able to come through the path, go through the gate. It just makes hosting that much more fun. And then Jose, the installer, is doing actually a really pretty stamped cement walk through here. And they're going to have a very large patio space in the back. So outdoor living is where it's at. And we wanted to transform the space to something they could use 8 months out of the year, hopefully.
Hopefully. So. I'm still eyeballing that hydrangea tree behind you.
Pretty, huh? It's pretty happy, too.
It's really happy. And that's another really good spot for it, too. I mean, that nice, like, dappled shade that it's going to get. I mean, You know, one of the main issues that you see with the hydrangeas that are in full sun here in Utah is that they bloom, and then right as they're supposed to transition colors into, like, you know, pinks or the reds, they end up kind of going brown. It's still really hot, like if we're having a really hot August. But by getting like a little bit of shade in here after they bloom, they won't burn anywhere near as much. And so, you know, placement to get the peak performance out of the plant is a concern as well. So again, like Jessica's done a great job of putting this in more of like a dappled shade type situation, so it should bloom beautifully. And then as the flowers age, it's just going to be gorgeous into September.
The other thing that I like to do with homeowners is just a little teaching. And a lot of people don't understand that this isn't a typical tree. It's essentially a shrub on a stick. So if you kind of let them the hydrangeas get too big and leggy, the weight of the blossoms can kind of pull them down, and they don't have quite the appearance that we're going for. So in this case, the homeowner understands I'd like them to maintain anything around a 3 foot by 3 foot eventually. Keep the stems more compact and keep the form more tight and formal, so as it blooms, it doesn't get droopy or look messy.